every now and then I do a show that gives me a whole lot of honor and pride and a real good feeling in being able to do. Not because of me, but oftentimes I interview and have the pleasure of being in the company of people who have really made a difference and who really responded to a call to action. And as everyone knows, November the 11th is Veterans Day, and the whole country joins in celebrating and honoring veterans throughout the centuries that have played quite a role in keeping us safe, keeping our country safe, and keeping our communities safe. So I'm particularly honored today to be doing this show because I have in my presence one of the original Montford Point Marines. Now, I wish I had about 6 hours to tell the whole story of the Montford Point Marines, but I don't. So who I have with me today is Mr. Thomas Mosley, you know, who's one of the original Montford Point Marines, and Mr. Eugene Mosley, who's, of course, although Mr. Thomas looks younger.
You got it, you got it, you got it.
Who's 91, just kidding with you, Eugene. I can't talk too much about your age because I think I taught you.
Yes, you did, in high school.
Yeah. And Eugene is Mr. Thomas Mosley's son. And I'm going to just ask him to give us an overview, not only of the Montford Point Marines, but also what's happening here today.
Okay, well today, thanks to the Bibb County Board of Education, the superintendent, the president of the Bibb County Board of Education, Rutland High School has changed the name of the Marine Corps Junior ROTC program to reflect 2 of the original Montford Point Marines, namely my dad, Thomas Mosley, and Mr. Frank Johnson, who many people in Macon refer to as the mayor of Unionville.
That's correct. That's correct.
He is now part of the legacy here at Rutland High School.
Well, that's so outstanding. And give us an overview, Mr. Thomas, if you feel like it, you know, kind of give us an overview of what the Montford Point Marine story is about.
Getting off that train and going into that bus for the first day and getting those clothes that were off the line to be able to wear in December, or rather November, was really something. So it will chill you down to your bones.
What clothes off the line, Dad?
The clothes we wore, we had to change uniform, or our clothes, the civilian to the military. And so we took those pants and fatigue coats. I wasn't expecting this, and so I may not give it a proper word for what it is.
Whatever you say is
fatigues.
Yes, but anyway, it was a really quite an a turnaround. First time away from home, from mom and dad,
right.
And from your family and friends, and so these are just things that you have to go through.
It is so significant when one reads about the Montford Point Marines and, you know, what had happened during the time, because this was back in the early 40s. Early 40s.
Right.
And, you know, although I understand that President Roosevelt signed a decree saying that segregation should not be allowed in any form of government, but then the Marine Corps began to accept Marines. But the situation was different, Gene.
Right.
For Montford Point Marines.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah. So
absolutely. If I could just
go ahead.
Piggyback on what you're saying, with that executive order, 8802, which forbid discrimination in the federal workplace.
Right.
Because you know at that time, millions of people were migrating to the north from all areas of the country
Right.
to get a part of the war effort
Right.
job.
Right.
Right, so there were millions of jobs that were created at that time. They said that prior to the war, there were millions and millions of cars that had been manufactured in the auto industry. During the entire war, there were only 139 cars that were manufactured completely throughout the years of the war. Once the United States said there's to be no discrimination in the federal workplace, the Marine Corps had to open their gates because they're also a federal workplace.
Yes, yes.
But one of the most extreme parts of it all is that for over 153 years, there had been no African Americans in the United States Marine Corps. So that was the beginning
Right.
of these guys going into Montford Point Camp. Now, I'm sure Dad remembers, or by the time he got there, the drill instructors, which had prior to this point been all white, were the drill instructors in charge of these men filtering in to Montford Point Camp. As the Marine Corps saw certain individuals being able to hold and shoulder the load of being a drill instructor, then at that point they would switch over to an African American drill instructor. But when these guys got into Montford Point Camp, it wasn't like they were being welcomed with open arms. They were not being welcomed with open
And
arms.
that Montford Point camp was not a part of the general camp.
No, it wasn't.
No.
No,
No, it wasn't.
The real camp was Camp Lejeune
Right.
for everybody else.
My dad can mention
But these
that.
African Americans who went to the Marine Corps, and it's my understanding that just thousands of African American men just flocked, wanted to serve their country,
Right.
Just flocked to Jacksonville. Was it Jacksonville?
Jacksonville, North Carolina.
Jacksonville, North
Take me
Carolina.
away from Jacksonville.
Yeah,
Take
yeah.
me away from Jacksonville till I die. Jacksonville stood still while the rest of the world went by.
That was the song that those soldiers, that song was written by one of their first Caucasian commander there, one of the first, his name Bobby Troop.
Yeah.
And Bobby Troop also wrote the song Route 66.
Right.
So that was a very popular song that was being sung by the guys.
Let's make sure that let's frame this thing so
Okay.
everybody will understand.
Right.
So what we're saying that back in 1942,
42.
The gates opened,
Yes.
which allowed African American men
Yes.
to serve in the Marines.
Yes.
And then they wanted to do everything else that any other soldier would do.
Right.
They wanted to serve their country, go to war, defend the country.
Right.
However, when they went to enlist into the Marines, rather than being a part of the general population,
Right.
then, because they were African Americans,
Right.
then they were put, in Jacksonville, at Montford Point, in Jacksonville, which the conditions were different, the administration was different, and that's why they're being honored, I think.
Well, that's a great part of it. The other part is they didn't want them on Camp Lejeune, so there was a spot about 5 miles adjacent to Camp Lejeune, which I think had been an old rifle range, Dad. I think that was
The
an
rifle
old.
range still was there.
It was there, so they used that as your initial base. Now, in terms of the sleeping quarters, they had the Quonset huts with that corrugated side wall that some of the guys said in the winter it was freezing cold and the summer was hot. And my dad talks about the time that all they had in there was that big potbelly stove in the center of the room.
Wow.
But these guys were not welcomed onto Montford Point Camp. As a matter of fact, I talked to a guy who's a Montford Pointer named Randolph Harold. And just to encapsulate the experience of some guys, this person told me that he and another man went through the gates of Montford Point Camp. and this drill instructor was waiting on them. See, they thought, and this is the true story, the Montford Point Marines thought that when the white drill instructors were sublimated to move out because they were being replaced by black drill
Great men
instructors.
like Master Gunnery Sergeant Huff and Master Gunnery Sergeant Jones and those non-commissioned officers that took zero to come into the Marine Corps. They had been in the Army and they served as the drill instructors and the leaders of the Montford Point Camp Marine.
One person in particular was a person by the name of Hashmart Johnson.
Hashmore.
Gilbert Hashmart Johnson. And Gilbert,
Dad remembers that.
oh, he remembered that, because he always said, well, let me get to that part of the story.
Right.
Hashmart Johnson has served in the Army and has served in the Navy for either 15 or 17 years, between the two. And then when the war broke out, he was on one of the ships in Pearl Harbor, if I'm not mistaken, that was in the melee.
Okay, okay.
He decided he wanted to join the United States Marine Corps. He went into the Corps after already, again, having served 17 or 15 to 17 years. And a hash mark are those hash marks that indicate how many years you've been in a branch of service.
Yeah, 4 years for each strike that you see.
That's the Marine Corps. Now, the Army is a little different. I think the Navy's may be a little different. But they represent, so he lost all of his stripes,
His rank.
all the rank when he joined the Marine Corps, but he had so many hash marks on his sleeve. I think he had 5 hash marks, 4 or 5 hash marks. And so they referred to him as Hashmart Johnson.
Wow.
And these men were not men to play around with. All eyes of the world were upon the Marine Corps at that time to see what is going to be the outcome of these people that we do not want in this particular outfit, because we've had it like this for 153 years. We don't want to change it. As a matter of fact, there was a General Thomas Holcomb. He went before the Board of the Navy.
White.
He was white. The Board of the Navy is a general board made up of civilians, but they govern both the Navy and the Marine Corps.
Okay, okay.
And he said, to the Board of the Navy, we feel like these men are wanting to join an entity that doesn't want them. He said, as far as his personal opinion was concerned, and he quoted, if it were up to me to recruit or to have 5,000 white Marines or 250,000 black Marines, I'd rather have 5,000 white Marines. So under no circumstance did they want African Americans in the Corps. That was the climate at Montford. That was the climate that filtered down to all those who were in control
Yes,
at Montford Point Camp.
right. And what about the link, the missing link of,
Well, we'll talk about that in a bit.
Okay.
That's not, we want to move at Mr. Havisham's pace.
We want to move at his pace. So whatever he would
Right,
like
no, that's
to say,
something
yeah.
that's something that we're going to capsule and bring up towards the tail end.
Okay. Well, I tell you what.
Once we move through the camp.
Yeah, Brother Mosley, you've done an outstanding job, both of you. So let's just take a break so Pop can catch his breath.
Okay.
And we'll be right back.
Get the link.
We won't forget
We're gonna
that.
get to the link. We're gonna get to the link. We're gonna be right back with the link. This is a call to action.
A call to action.
I'm your host, Alex Habershaw. We'll be
wow.
right back.
Okay, all right, that's
All
right.
right, where are we going?
No, it's just gonna take a few minutes, Dad.
We're going back on the air. When I said we'll be right back.
Okay.
He's an original Montford Point Marine, and Mr. Frank Johnson, who had to leave, but he was also here to accept that honor along with his wife, Dorothy. So I'm gonna turn it back over to you, Mr. Gene, because I know you got some other pointers.
Yeah.
Oh, incidentally,
Yes.
congratulations on your book. And then when you finish it,
Yes.
you know, let me know, and I will be certain to let the community know that you have published that book. And I appreciate what you're doing, you know, and because we don't need to let our legacy die.
No.
You know, it plays a major role.
Yes, it does.
In letting us know what direction we should take for the future.
Right.
So
Right.
I
And
know-
I've gotten some good advice from not only my sisters, but the book is co-authored with my dad.
Okay,
So it's firsthand experiences.
okay.
Okay, and this is the Montford Point Marine, the Montford Point Marines, as told to me through my dad.
Oh, wow.
Okay,
Wow.
now, at the Montford Point camp, and the reason I bring up the disparity is because it's leading into some of the other things that took place during World War II.
Okay.
And I have to bring up what was going on at Montford Point camp so people would have an understanding of why these guys across the country have received a Congressional Gold Medal. See, many people think that it was because, well, they're the first black Marines that came into the Corps, so now here we're going to give them Congressional Gold Medals above some of these frontline Marines and some of these other Marines who have spent years at the citadels and the military, the great military institutions.
Right.
It wasn't about that at all. What happened is that these guys were not wanted, as we spoke about it earlier. They were not wanted in the Corps. So they had to train sometimes with weapons that came from World War I.
Springfield.
The old Springfield rifles.
Yeah.
There was one Montford Pointer that told me when he walked into the camp of Montford Point, the drill instructor met them. Now by this time, they had swung over from white drill instructors to black drill instructors. They thought times would get easier. Hey, we're seeing some, but it actually got worse in many cases. Because you had people like Hashmart Johnson.
That's small.
You had people like Sergeant Major Huff. And I asked my dad one time, I said, Dad.
Mr. Moses said, bad.
He said,
bad.
Names come up.
I said, Dad, did you ever get a chance to meet Sergeant Huff? And he said, I'll tell you the truth, Eugene. He said, you didn't want to see Sergeant Huff. He said he was a bad man. He said, if you had to go see Sergeant Huff, you knew you were in some kind of trouble. So you wanted to steer clear. Isn't that what you said, Dad?
Definitely. No, just even thinking of his name would fear you. They were bad Marines.
Well, now, let me imagine you said they were bad because they didn't treat you right? They just dogged you?
They knew that they had a job to do, and we had to be uplifted to the position to appreciate what was being done.
So they gave them some rough times because, see, these Marines were already well-structured Marines.
Okay.
They didn't need these guys. And plus they were sort of on the cusp because they were already in the Corps. They didn't associate as much with the new recruits or enlistees as much the established quo. So when these guys came, they were like peons. And so many times a drill instructor would tell these Marines, why don't you guys just leave? No one's going to come looking for you if you leave. So why don't you just go on over the hill? There was a transcript that Sergeant Huff, I really want to put this in, I'm going to make it brief. Sergeant Huff was being interviewed one time by a person, and he was trying to get an idea as to what the platoons were made of, how many there were, the the type of training that they had to go through. So Sergeant Huff said, and Sergeant Huff was one of the guys that when he came in, right away, he was a huge guy. He figured the Marine Corps was the toughest military thing going, so that's what he wanted to be a part of. Well, when he got to Montford Point Camp, he was an outstanding person in many ways. So they sent him right away to drill instructor school. So when he came out, there was something like 40-something people in his platoon. By the time boot camp was over, they were down to something like 20 or 25 or something. So they asked him, well, Sergeant Huff, well, what happened to the guys? So he said, well, some went over the hill. Some ended up in the hospital because it was grueling. North Carolina, hot in the summertime, freezing in the winter. And then he said, you have to understand, Sergeant Huff said, you have to understand, Montford Point Camp was such that it was rigorous. And if you could make it through the training of Montford Point Camp, and he wasn't saying this to be hilarious, but this was, I guess, the strongest way he could put it. He said, if you could make it through Montford Point Camp, you could walk through hell and sing a song. He said, because Montford Point Camp was no joke.
Well, I guess that ties in to that medal that your dad got around.
Well, here's the thing. When these men began to move out into the South Pacific, they began to move out into the South Pacific. Now, what happened, Montford Point Camp was structured with depot, ammo, stewards companies, and it was after the frontline Marines realized they were not getting the supplies in fast enough, that ammo was running short. They needed those medical supplies. They needed that kerosene. They needed that gasoline. They had to use the men of Montford Point to make the transition. And once these guys took over, the ammo men, the depot men, bringing in those supplies, this is what my dad was saying earlier when he said it linked the chain back that was obviously broken. Because immediately the effects could be felt from those frontline Marines. And they did whatever they had to do to get the supplies in. When they came off those ships, when those front gates would drop down off of those landing barges and landing ships,
LSTs.
those LSTs, you're still sharp. Those LSTs, and them guys had to be bringing in them. How many pounds did them crates weigh, Dad? Sometimes
Each one of them, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 50 pounds for the 50 caliber and 30 calibers. And then, of course, you had your hand grenades.
and quite a few other things. See, these guys were
90
specialists.
pounds for each box.
About
that
90,
came in.
yeah, 18, 12 or something like that.
Yeah.
See, these guys would stack the ammunition. He was an ammo handler. They would stack the ammunition in Camp Catlin, Hawaii. They would stack the ammunition. Sometimes it was 2-story stacks, looked like warehouses with nothing but ammunition. They had to know where to get it from, what they were shipping out. They would take it to the ships 24 hours a day or at night, whatever the circumstances called for, load it up. There were some other Montford Pointers that went along with the ship to all islands of the South Pacific.
Wow.
Guam, Peleliu, Roy-Nama, Kwajalein, the Solomon Islands, all down in the Okinawa, and unloaded under the gunfire.
Right.
Through the agitating surf of the ocean, through the booby traps, to the frontline Marines. And no matter what the situation was, they had to get it there. Once they got there, then they had to move and maneuver through the swamps to bring out the dead and the wounded, because that was also their responsibility.
Wow.
And immediately it turned the tide of the war and it brought that broken link back together. That's what these guys were noted for. It wasn't because they were the first African Americans into the Corps.
because of what they did.
What they did. Now,
Right.
at first, they were all these other names. And then there was another general.
We don't want to run out of time.
Okay, yeah, we are almost there.
Yeah, without acknowledging
Yes.
this medal that your dad has around his neck.
Okay, thank you.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah, so Dad,
Yeah.
that Congressional Gold
If
Medal.
I can remember all of this, what this day has brought forward to, and the Rutland High School never knew anything about it, and when I got out here, it keeps getting bigger. And so as we look in and all the love that has been given to each and every one of those who came out and those who were a part of this big celebration. I've been into quite a few, even up to Washington, D.C. to receive the Congress Congressional Medal. And you're talking about heavy. It is nothing really to, it takes weight, you know, this weight will weigh you down.
It's a heavy
from
baby,
the
isn't
shoulders down.
Yeah.
But it's been.
Who gave that to you?
This from the President of the United States to the Congress of
Through Congress.
the United States.
Through Congress.
Yeah.
Well, again, I think I would be remiss if I didn't just take another few minutes to express my appreciation to you and to Frank Johnson for being honored and, you know, deservedly so. To Mr. Dixon and his leadership, the Montford Point Marine Association in Central Georgia, and Dr. Mosley here.
As well as Rutland High School for affording
I'm gonna
us
say
this.
that. I'm gonna say that.
Yes.
As well as Rutland High School for acknowledging and honoring Mr. Mosley and Mr. Johnson, and you know, I mean, it makes you feel good. I'm sure.
Absolutely.
You know that Mr. Mosley can't describe the kind of feeling and the joy and the awesomeness that it gives him for being presented with the medal and also being presented with the opportunity to have this great facility here at Rutland named after him. This is a call to action.
Call to action.
I'm your host, Alex Habersham. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
You're
I'm
quite
going to
welcome.
shake you with this,
And
and I'm going to salute you with this one.
Rutland High School,
Yes.
it's been a great pleasure, and this is a long way from into the lands and waters of mosquitoes and bears and tigers, not tigers,
Not
but
those tigers.
snakes and,
Yeah.
and all.
That's up in
The
Montford
indigo
Point.
bunting.
Yeah.
And so it's a long way. I would never in my whole life know about this. And of course, I carried along even until this present day. Wasn't aware of this great situation and the things that people will open up their hearts and their minds and their souls to be able to make sure that everything was all right. And as I can see here and look around, my family and all have been great to me, and the staff here at Rutland, how can I forget the things, the duties and the responsibilities that they have given to me. So thanks very much. I don't have words enough, but if you allow me another time, I got some more things that I've forgotten about.
All right, Dad.
But this has been really great, and my family usually don't like to take this much time right now, but here they are sitting quietly until they say, okay, everything is all over with for the day.
Yes.
And so really
That's it.
appreciate it, and the things that you've given
Yes, sir.
to us has really opened it up.
Thank you, sir.
And don't forget Harold Crafter,
Okay.
my American Financial Services, that I was an agent with, and also Warner Robins Air Logistics Command. And I rose up into the headquarters of that through my promotions and everything from being a sheet metal mechanic. So thanks ever so much for everything, and like I say, it's just a whole lot of things. And we're gonna close up here now. Thanks ever so much for your endeavors.
Thanks, Dad.
And everything that y'all have done. I don't think that if you had a chance that you would do anything any better.
Thank you, sir. This is a call to action.
Oh,
We got to wind up here at the end.
Wound up at the end.
I'm your host, Alex Habersham. Have a great day.
Yes, indeed.